Transformers 1 has released in theaters, so it's time to rank the 9 theatrical Transformers films on this tier list. And I'm gonna start with the very first Transformers movie. I was originally unsure if I was going to rank Transformers the movie or not. I have never seen the original Transformers cartoon, so I really considered skipping this one. But this movie did play in theaters, so I felt like I kinda had to rank it. And I'm really glad I did, because I'm pleasantly surprised. I found myself really enjoying a lot of what this film has to offer. First and foremost, the animation and action scenes are insane. The animation is so fluent and lively and really brings these robots to life. And a ton of the action scenes go incredibly hard. The Decepticon assault on Autobot City is a really impressive set piece. Every action scene with the Dinobots is also awesome. I seriously love those guys. And the final fight with the Autobots against Unicron is appropriately epic. But really the greatest action scene of the film is when Optimus Prime rolls into battle to fight Megatron. Everything about this is perfect. Their actual fight, the emotional tension, the music choice. You Got the Touch is an inspired needle drop. And these action scenes are elevated by the fact that there are actual stakes in the movie. Optimus Prime friggin' dies, and he doesn't come back, at least not in this movie. Apparently he is resurrected in season 3 of the show, but losing the leader of the Autobots and their strongest member in the first act of the movie puts the main characters in a terrible predicament. I mean, they're left with Ultra Magnus as a leader. Who the heck is Ultra Magnus? Oh, he's dead. Oh, he's back now. But he's still a mid character. And speaking of mid characters, the main protagonists of the film are a mixed bag. I like some of them, like Cup. He's a funny boomer bot with his old war stories. And Blur is pretty comical. But the rest of the main squad I couldn't really care about. Especially Hot Rod. After he got Optimus Prime killed, I kinda lost all interest in him as a character. And he doesn't really have much of a story arc. He just kinda does stuff for an hour and then finds out he can open the matrix of leadership, and then he becomes Rodimus Prime. The only thing I really like about his character is that he's voiced by Judd Nelson, which is amusing because of another movie we'll talk about later in the tier list. Also, just a random thought, when Daniel puts on the exoskeleton suit, it really reminded me of that one scene from Iron Man 2. You know which one I'm talking about.
You turn to the right.
I think the villains of this movie might be my favorite part about it. There are some really threatening ones like Unicron or Galvatron. Also, it's crazy that Unicron is voiced by Orson Welles. Insane. But the villains are also really funny. This clip of Starscream kicking Megatron will live rent-free in my head forever. Also, I know Megatron mass shifting into a gun has always been a thing, but it's still so funny to me watching him transform into a gun for Starscream to hold. I bet we all wish someone would hold us the way Starscream holds Megatron. The worst part about this film has to be the pacing. It is just non-stop action for the entire runtime. Because of that, the characters and story don't really get much development. And especially towards the middle section of the movie, I just got bored. But Transformers the movie is still a solid, breezy, fun little watch. So I'm going to put it in B tier.
Before time began, there was the Cube.
Yeah, the original Transformers is just iconic. There are very few movies from my childhood that have left as big of an impact on me as this film. It brings back so many good memories. Watching it on road trips, watching it with my cousins, playing with the toys. I still do that from time to time. This is the Transformers I grew up with. And even now, 17 years later, I still think most of this movie holds up. Especially the CGI, my goodness. All the Transformers movies have good CGI, but it's especially impressive for a movie that released in 2007. I know everyone dunks on modern day CGI, but seriously, look at this. What is happening? We're regressing as a society. A lot of the action scenes are also amazing. I've seen this movie maybe 20 to 30 times in my life, and I still geek out over most of these fights. Bumblebee's brawl with Barricade, Optimus's butchering of Bone Crusher, and the entire final sequence are all fantastic bits of action. And beyond the character models or the fights, I think the transforming animations are sick as heck. You can see plates shifting, screws and bolts moving, and screwing. It looks really realistic is what I'm trying to say, and it helps to make these giant car people seem more feasible. There are some dumb things in this movie though. There's a bunch of human characters and most of them don't have any development. There's a stereotypical group of army dudes led by this boring dude who has to get home to see his newborn baby. Just a very typical soldier story. And their subplot in the first half of the movie is pretty boring. The blackout sequence at the beginning is cool and kinda scary, but everything else in the desert is just kinda lame. But not as boring as the government subplot. My lord. Besides Anthony Anderson, all these characters are about as interesting as wheat toast. Jon Voight is an Oscar-nominated actor and he clearly does not want to be here.
Inform all commands to prepare for imminent attack.
And there's also the ding dong scene. Oh my goodness, the ding dong scene. Let me describe to you the genius of the ding dong scene. You have this Decepticon Frenzy who's hacking into stuff on Air Force One. That's not really important. We immediately get jump scared by the toes of President George W. Bush. He tells the assistant to go get ding dongs, and she does, except she drops them like an idiot. And you would think she would just pick up the ding dong and the scene would end. But no, she brushes it off, takes a bite, and goes, ugh. She reacted like she was surprised. Lady, you picked up the ding dong off of the floor. You knew what you were getting yourself into. Why did you react like that? I've talked too much about ding dongs. Shia LaBeouf. People dog on Shia's performance in this movie, but I actually think that's a bit unwarranted. Acting alongside make-believe robots can't be easy, and I think he sells his performance throughout the movie. He's fantastic in the more comical moments, but he sells the more dramatic parts well enough. Megan Fox is kind of bad in this though.
What are you, like an alien or something?
A lot of times, she had some really stilted and wooden line delivery. I've been complaining about this movie for a little bit, but there sure is one thing it got right.
My name is Optimus Prime.
This movie gets so much better when the Autobots show up. While they don't have any real character depth to them, that's an issue that plagues most Bayverse movies. This original Autobot team is full of personality. Optimus is classic Optimus, and he has a couple really great moments in the film. Bumblebee is the GOAT, and I really like his dynamic with Sam. Jazz is Jazz. But I really want to talk about Ironhide and Ratchet. These two get disrespected in the sequels, but in this first Transformers movie, there's a point where they're carrying the team on their backs. As soon as the final battle of the film starts, Bumblebee gets his legs blown off, Jazz dies, and Optimus Prime is nowhere to be seen. He's off doing God knows what. And in the meantime, before Optimus shows back up, Ironhide and Ratchet are the only ones protecting Sam from the Decepticons. And speaking of Decepticons, this movie has some of the best in the series. Megatron, iconic. Starscream, he's a Dorito, but he's cool. And Barricade is one of the most iconic lines of the entire series.
Or your username, ladiesman217.
Transformers will always be a super entertaining nostalgia trip. And despite its silly things, it's a fantastic watch. So I'm going to put it in A tier. Yeah, this movie is just terrible. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is a movie I have a lot of nostalgia for, but I really struggled to get through it this time. For starters, the movie bombards you with so many different storylines. There's Sam and Michaela's relationship troubles. There's the story of Sam's parents having trouble with letting him go as he goes to college. There's the story of Sam thinking he doesn't need Bumblebee anymore. There's the main plot of Sam and the gang trying to find the matrix of leadership. There's the story with the government having issues with the Autobots. The Decepticons are doing mischievous stuff. And then there's this Fallen guy, he's here too. Because there are so many different stories, none of them really get much development throughout the runtime, and some of them are dropped really quickly. The conflict between this government guy and the Autobots is thrown out right before the final fight, because tricking a government agent into jumping out of an airplane has no consequences, I guess. And the conflict between Sam and Bumblebee is also resolved right away. This movie could have had a really good story that tests the bond between these two characters, but it just doesn't. And there's nothing between the two main characters of the first film after the halfway point of the movie. And I can go on and on about all the other stupid stuff. These dogs, Sam's mom does pot, this creepy shot of Megan Fox, Michael Bay's constant use of turnaround shots, Wheelie's entire existence, John Turturro's ass, Devastator's fat nuts, that Decepticon that has the human tongue attachment thingy, Sam telling Bumblebee, I don't need you anymore, but not even 5 minutes ago he still needed him. And I'm not even gonna talk about these guys. Sam and Michaela also have a weak story. There's this whole thing where Sam won't tell her that he loves her for some reason. It comes up a couple of times, but it's really not important. But I think Shia LaBeouf is actually pretty good in this movie. He's really great at spurging out and acting crazy, and a lot of the funny moments in the film are from him.
Kick counter, kick counter, kick counter, kick counter, kick counter, kick counter, kick counter.
What the F?
I think a lot of the action set pieces are really fun. The scene in Shanghai is cool. It's great watching the Autobots work together as a team. But I have to say the new Transformers are a mixed bag. Sideswipe is awesome. The RCs are whatever. Mudflap and Skids are Mudflap and Skids. And then there's this guy Jolt. He shows up for like 2 scenes in the movie, has no lines, and we never see him again. It's really bizarre, and I found out he actually has toys made of him. Who in their right mind would possibly buy? Addiction is a sickness. But the real standout moment of this movie is Optimus Prime's 1v3 against Megatron, Starscream, and Grindor. Not only is this one of the best fights in the Transformers series, but it's one of the best fights in the entire action genre. I mean, look at this man. He's fighting a 1v3 and he's winning. It perfectly shows Optimus's character as someone who is willing to risk his life and even give his life for someone else. It is a shame though that he dies so early. In a movie that's focused on the original primes, it seems weird that the main prime as a character has no real plot relevance. He dies, is resurrected, then goes, oh, guess it's time to kill people now. He doesn't even question why he's in Egypt or what's happening. Optimus Prime's only role in this movie is to fight people, and that's a real shame. You know what's just the absolute worst thing about this movie? Worse than anything else I've described so far? The Fallen. The Fallen is just a terrible main villain who really doesn't make any sense. We learn that there were the original primes who created the Matrix of Leadership. It's a magical robot thing that does magical robot things. But the Fallen hates humans, so he wants to use the Matrix of Leadership to power the machine to destroy the sun. But the other primes stopped him and took the Matrix away from him. But now he's back and wants his revenge. Yeah, I have some questions. Why does he hate humans? Why does he want revenge? Who does he want revenge on? It can't be the primes because they're all dead, and it can't be the humans because they did nothing to this man. Apparently he wanted to destroy the sun because it could make energon, I guess. So he just had a really good idea at work, but his coworkers wouldn't let him do it, is what I'm understanding here. A lot of this movie relies on the Fallen being a really good villain and the mystery behind the Matrix and the primes who made the Matrix. Both are entirely underwhelming and poorly thought out. Revenge of the Fallen is probably the movie that gave the Transformers series a bad name, and it's one I don't think I'll go back to rewatch very often. So I'm going to put Transformers Revenge of the Fallen in D tier.
Who would you be without me, Prime? Time to find out.
This is a darn good movie. Watching Transformers Dark of the Moon immediately after Revenge of the Fallen is a breath of fresh air. This movie has its dumb moments for sure.
Deep Wang. Deep Wang.
But there's a lot here that is genuinely great. For starters, Sam has actual character development in this movie. When we are reintroduced to him, he kind of hates his life. He's constantly reliving the glory days of saving the world, earning a medal from President Obama, and he's struggling to move on and adjust to normal life. And over the course of the film, it feels almost rewarding to see Sam grow as a person and to appreciate the life he's building with his girlfriend over the life he had with the Autobots. It's especially gratifying when Sam gathers up all the soldiers from the first two movies to go to Chicago, not to save the world or to be a hero again, but to save his girlfriend. And I think this is a very fitting end for Sam's story in these movies. Although I will say Carly as a character isn't all that great. She doesn't have a lot of development and she only really exists to further Sam's character development and to be Michael Bay's eye candy. Another big improvement this movie has over the second film is the mystery in the lead up to the film's big reveal. It's actually kind of interesting watching Sam and Simmons investigate and figure out what these pillars are and their connection to Sentinel Prime. And on the Transformers side of things, we get to see the Autobots and the government at odds with each other and slowly lose their mutual trust as Optimus brings Sentinel Prime back to Earth. And on top of all of that, the Decepticons are planning something as Laserbeak kills everyone who knows about Sentinel Prime and the moon. We have these three different interweaving storylines that perfectly converge into one of the biggest plot twists in any Transformers film. Holy f***! Sentinel's a bad guy. I will never forget watching this for the first time as a child. Never have I felt so betrayed in my 9 years of living. I was grieving in that movie theater, man. I loved Ironhide. I had the small Ironhide toy as a kid, and he was my favorite character to play as in the Revenge of the Fallen video game. May he rest in peace. This is such a great twist, and Sentinel Prime is easily one of, if not the best villains in any Transformers film. Mostly because his motivations actually make sense. Unlike Optimus, who values all life, Sentinel is only concerned with Cybertronian life and views his race as higher than any other. That makes for such a great conflict between the two primes in this movie. And on top of all that, Sentinel is a beast. He gives Optimus a run for his money, and he straight up fights the entire Autobot team by himself. And there is just so much more to enjoy. This is maybe the funniest film of the series, because Dark of the Moon realized the funniest thing these films have isn't Sam's parents or stereotypical robots, it's Shia LaBeouf. Many of the funniest moments in this film are from him just snapping.
Those are my brass knuckles. That's my anklet. Do I have to take that off too? And my toe rings?
After Sentinel's turn, it raises the stakes tremendously. People are dying, cities are being taken over, cats and dogs living together. The entire first hour and a half of this movie exists to put the pieces in place for the crowning jewel of the Bayverse Transformers movies, the Battle of Chicago. Man, oh man, this is an impressive hour-long action sequence. Firstly, it has the perfect teams of Autobots and Decepticons. On the Autobot side, you have Optimus, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Sideswipe, Dino, Wheeljack, and the Wreckers. I miss you, Ironhide. And on the Decepticon side, you have Megatron, Sentinel, Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, Barricade, the Driller, and a bunch of the other ones who aren't really important. These are some of the core Transformers characters, and it's really fun to watch them beat the hell out of each other. And the different action scenes we get are spectacular. The building collapse scene is really intense and impressively filmed. Optimus fighting and killing the Driller is a cool moment with a lot of fanfare. I know a lot of people have issue with Sam and Lennox killing Starscream, but I think it's kind of funny. Starscream is so unthreatening in this franchise, and I think him going out this way is poetic cinema. Wheeljack's death sort of comes out of nowhere. They don't actually show when all the Autobots are captured. That's kind of weird, but his death is actually kind of sad. Bumblebee's reaction really helps the audience to feel that pain. But of course, the Autobots find the opening to fight back, and it's so enjoyable watching Bumblebee avenge his friend in the most brutal way possible.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
My goodness, he messed Soundwave up. The movie ends with a climactic fight between Optimus, Sentinel, and Megatron. And this is a cool fight. Although a lot of people do have issue with how the fight ends, with Optimus killing Megatron really quickly and then straight up executing Sentinel Prime. But you know what? Good. I'm glad he did it. Fuck this guy. He killed Ironhide. It makes me so happy to see Optimus Prime shoot this guy and then shoot him again. If I were holding the gun, I would have emptied the mag. But anyway, Transformers Dark of the Moon is a really fun action film and one of my favorites in this series. So I'm going to put it in A tier.
Statute 2705-3.
This is not okay.
Transformers Age of Extinction. This one is just not good. It's just so long and boring. Why is it almost 3 hours long? The movie has some good concepts that would make for a great Transformers film, but it doesn't really explore any of them. The humans turning on the Autobots and hunting down all Transformers is a very intriguing idea. The scenes where humans kill Ratchet and Leadfoot are really hard to watch. But that's as far as this movie explores that concept. The main human antagonists are this guy, and neither of them are interesting in the slightest. I really like Kelsey Grammer, but he can't save this blank slate of a character. There's also the story with Stanley Tucci's character and his company making man-made Transformers. Again, this is an interesting concept, but it just evolved into Galvatron getting, I guess, possessed by Megatron, and now these man-made Transformers are just Decepticons and they're doing their own thing, free of human input. Also, the KSI Transformers turning into a bunch of particles and then turning into a truck or whatever is so lame. Lockdown is here too. What I'm about to say is going to make some people upset, but stick with me. Lockdown is completely unnecessary. I know, he's cool. He's got a cool design, a face gun. I think his motivation for hunting Optimus Prime makes sense, but he doesn't mesh well with the man-made Transformers story, or even with the humans hunting Transformers story. He's just an addition, and Lockdown himself says he doesn't really care about human interests. I think it would have made more sense if Lockdown and everything with his character were completely removed, and instead KSI contracted Galvatron to the US government and Galvatron was used to hunt down Autobots. I feel like that change would have furthered the themes of humans versus Transformers, and also removing Lockdown would have cut down this movie's runtime by like at least 20 or 30 minutes, which is desperately needed. It is slow getting through this thing. Something that certainly doesn't help the boring nature of this movie is the human characters. This is the worst cast of characters in any Transformers movie. Cade Yeager is very boring and Mark Wahlberg is acting like Mark Wahlberg. They tried to give him a character arc, but it's as stereotypical as it gets. He has a daughter who's becoming an adult, but he's not ready to let her go. But he learns to see her as an adult over the course of the movie and he lets her go. We've seen this trope so many times in movies. Even Sam's parents in Revenge of the Fallen had a very similar arc. It's made even worse by the fact that the movie keeps reminding the audience that she is in fact a minor. And so many weird scenes.
You stole mouthwash?
I like to be fresh when I'm making out with your daughter.
I'm not even gonna talk about this bozo and his laminated copy of the Romeo and Juliet law. He freaking laminated it. What is this movie? Stanley Tucci is also really bad. I can't get a read on what his character is supposed to be because his performance is all over the place.
Algorithms! Math!
Top 5 most annoying Transformers characters for sure. And speaking of annoying characters, the new Transformers kinda suck. You have a stereotypical fat American guy, a stereotypical samurai guy, and an Australian guy with a trench coat. Don't ask me about the physics of a Transformer trench coat because I really don't know. This is for sure the worst Autobot team, but luckily Bumblebee is still here. I don't want to be too incredibly harsh on this movie though, because there are some positives. I think Michael Bay's directorial style actually really works for the feel this movie is going for. It has this almost post-apocalyptic aesthetic. It really comes across that this is a different world from the previous 3 movies. Also, Optimus Prime's story is kinda well realized. His convictions of protecting humans and preserving life, even at great risk of his own life, is tested. And I think it's cool seeing a more bitter and betrayed Optimus, who over the course of the movie softens into the hero we all know. It's a solid character arc and it adds a new dimension to this character. I like some of the action in the movie. A lot of it is stuff we've seen before, like car chases and such. The fight at the end with the KSI Transformers and with Lockdown is all serviceably entertaining. Good things in this movie. TJ Miller dies pretty early on. That's good, so we don't have to listen to him crack jokes and be an idiot every 2 minutes. Yeah, I guess that's my thoughts on Transformers Age of Extinction. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, the Dinobots are in this movie. I completely forgot about those guys. Kinda like how they were an afterthought in this movie. Seriously though, I still remember my disappointment after watching this for the first time. The Dinobots were all over the marketing, but they have no plot relevance whatsoever. They're there to be cool, awesome dino robots that kill things and nothing else. But I will say, they are pretty cool. I mean, look at Grimlock. Transformers Age of Extinction is a boring, jumbled mess of a film. And while it has some good things here and there, it's not worth the nearly 3-hour investment. So it's going in D tier.
Dad, you dropped your fork. Dad, you can't see without those. What are you doing? Dad, no!
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't expect to like Transformers The Last Night nearly as much as I did. It's not good, don't get me wrong, this is not a good movie, but I think I honestly might have enjoyed it more than Revenge of the Fallen or Age of Extinction. One of the coolest things this film does is the combination of actual history and myths with Transformers. The opening scene of the movie is a well-crafted medieval sequence where King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table fight alongside Transformers who combine into a dragon. It's a super cool scene that sets up the entire rest of the film. It also introduces the MacGuffin of the movie, Merlin's staff. It's just a shame that Stanley Tucci's Merlin is annoying as hell.
Oh, God, I'm sozzled.
They really did Stanley Tucci dirty in this series. This concept does present some holes though. In the first movie, it seems like the Autobots were on Earth for the first time, so it's odd that they were revealed to be on Earth way before that, and Bumblebee fought in World War II, which is a whole thing. Kinda crazy that there were car people killing Nazis and no one knew about it. The movie also takes a little bit to get going. We spend a lot of time with Cade and these other boring characters. However, we do get a pretty cool action sequence at this abandoned town between the Autobots and the newly formed Decepticon team. And by the way, Megatron's design in this movie is awesome. I mean, look at this man. Galvatron, who? But the film really picks up with the introduction of Cogman and Anthony Hopkins' character, Sir Edmund Burton. The most surprising part of this movie was that Anthony Hopkins actually tried and gave a really good performance. He serves as the center of this movie up until, you know, he dies. But while he's here, he gives a really fun and energetic performance. He breathes a lot of life into this otherwise down and depressing movie. Cogman is also iconic. I mean, he puts the annoying trenchcoat Transformer in his place. Something that seemed odd about this movie is how it carried over the humans versus Autobots storyline from Age of Extinction. I assumed the Autobots saving the world for the umpteenth time would resolve that storyline, and the two main antagonists from that story are both dead. But no, I guess the ending of Age of Extinction meant literally nothing. Whatever. Lennox and these other military characters chase the main crew around through most of the movie, and they aren't all that important. Hot Rod makes his introduction, and I think he's a great addition. He's French, has a lot of personality, has a cool ult mode, has a time gun. He's French. Also, I think it's kind of a cool twist for Earth to be Unicron. Does it make sense with the pre-established movies? No, probably not, but it's still kinda interesting. Optimus Prime's story in this movie is complete garbage though. He's in like 2 scenes in the first 2/3 of the movie, one where he's captured by Quintessa and another where he's turned evil by Quintessa, but then he gets to Earth and is turned good like 5 minutes later. I don't know what the point of that story was if it was dropped so quickly. I guess it was a way to get Merlin's staff into Megatron's hands, but that's literally it. And Quintessa is such a laughably terrible villain. Like Optimus Prime, she's barely in the movie and her motivations are muddled, and she's easily the most forgettable villain in the entire series. The one good thing that came from this story has to be the Optimus versus Bumblebee fight. Bumblebee is the GOAT. No other Autobot would even dare step up to Optimus and challenge him to a 1v1. I mean, he loses of course, but he puts up a good fight. However, Bee's voice magically coming back and turning Optimus to the good side is kinda lazy writing, but whatever, it gets us to the final battle quicker. And I think this is a pretty solid final battle. The visuals of this viney, torn up Cybertron descending from the sky is really cool, and I really enjoy how they staged the final battle on this high up platform. It's shot like an old war movie and full of great moments. Optimus's speech before the final fight, Squeak's blowing up the giant cannon, the Dragon Transformer is pretty awesome, and of course the most infamous moment from this entire film, Optimus Prime's 6-man. But still, Transformers: The Last Knight is mediocre at best, and while I enjoy it more than Revenge of the Fallen or Age of Extinction, I can't really put it above either of them, so I'm going to put it in D tier.
Are we cringing yet?
Bumblebee is such a special Transformers film. From the very beginning, this movie delivers something we've been wanting forever. We actually get a full-on scene from the war on Cybertron, and oh my goodness, this is a fantastic scene. The battle is super dynamic, and we get to see familiar Autobots and Decepticons sporting their G1 looks. Ironhide, Ratchet, Wheeljack, Soundwave, Starscream, Shockwave. All these classic Transformers look so cool, and Optimus is an absolute beast in this movie. We don't get to see a lot of him because this is the Bumblebee movie, but what we do see is very memorable. Seriously, his stand against the entire Decepticon force is something to behold. He grabs Skywarp like he's nothing and throws him away like he's nothing. I think most of the villains in this movie are really solid. Dropkick, Shatter, and to a lesser extent Blitzwing are all intimidating Decepticons that outclass Bumblebee in every way. They're bigger, stronger, and have more abilities than Bee, and it's thrilling to see him outsmart each of these foes and win the day. And Bumblebee won because, of course, he's the GOAT. And I think Dropkick and Shatter's motivations make sense as villains. They're foot soldiers in an ongoing war, and they'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. And on the human side, I think Agent Burns is a fairly well characterized human antagonist. He has this arc of hating Bumblebee and any other Transformer, and then slowly begins to see Bee in a different light after Bumblebee goes out of his way to save him. It's not a groundbreaking story arc or anything, but it makes him more compelling than a typical government agent character. Most of the other military scenes are kinda boring, and while it is really silly that the government would team up with the Decepticons, how well convincing the higher-ups by playing on their fears of Russia and the Cold War makes the storyline more believable. And it's absolutely hilarious that John Cena is the only one with reservations about working with the Decepticons.
They literally call themselves Decepticons. That doesn't set off any red flags?
Out of all the different military characters in this franchise, this is the only one who makes any sense. But I have to talk about the absolute best part of this movie. The fact that this is the first Transformers film that's purely character driven. Charlie Watson is easily the most well-written human character in this entire franchise. When we're first introduced to her, she's very cynical and doesn't get along with her family. We learn that after her dad's passing, she's struggling to move on from her grief, and old things she used to do now only bring her pain. She doesn't high dive anymore, she doesn't go through her dad's old music, and she's frustrated by the fact that she can't fix her dad's old car. But after meeting Bumblebee, he helps her go through this arc of opening up about her grief, accepting it, and ultimately letting it go. Her doing the high dive during the final battle is an incredibly powerful moment that shows how far she's come as a character. Bumblebee helps her feel like herself again, and Haley Steinfeld's performance sells every scene she's in. But not only does Bumblebee help Charlie go through her character arc, she helps him go through his. When Bee crashes on Earth, he's immediately damaged and forced into hiding, and throughout the movie, Charlie teaches Bee about Earth. She teaches him how to communicate through music and becomes a genuine friend. We also do get rickrolled, but I'll let it slide. And at the end of the movie, Bee isn't only fighting for him or the other Autobots, he's also fighting for his friend. She helps him remember who he is, an Autobot, and a hero who will stop at nothing to save the day. With most Transformers movies, you're there for the action set pieces and the big explosions and stuff. But with Bumblebee, I'm here for them. The action sequences are fun and exciting. There's a bunch of laughs to be had with Mimo and Charlie's family. The villains are threatening and really raise the stakes. All of that is all well and good. But at the end of the day, the thing that makes this movie so special is watching these two characters who are lost in their own different ways, learn from one another, and grow as people. And that's why this is the best Transformers movie ever made. Also, how funny is it that Judd Nelson is in 2 Transformers movies? He voiced Hot Rod in the original, and here he is in Bumblebee as a tiny John Bender on Charlie's TV. This is the amusing thing I mentioned way back in my ranking for Transformers the movie. Bumblebee is fantastic and always a joy to go back and rewatch. It's going in S tier. Monkey movie. Transformers Rise of the Beasts is an almost perfect Transformers film. It has a really great beginning and a really great climactic ending, but the middle section of the movie is a bit underwhelming. As soon as the main characters go to Peru, the pacing tanks. It becomes really inconsistent until the final battle. Noah and Elena exploring the temple area is really uninteresting. There's a ton of exposition from Optimus Primal about what the Maximals are doing for all these years. And then there's that whole situation with Air Razor turning evil and giving the Transwarp key to Scourge. This whole area of the movie is really jumbled and also hurts the character stories. Optimus Prime and Noah have a parallel character arc of learning to work with each other even though they're not from the same group of people. These story arcs are well set up and have a solid finish when they full on team up to fight Scourge, but their stories don't get any solid development in the middle portion of the story. We just get a couple awkward scenes, like when Noah's gonna destroy the Transwarp key and Optimus begs him not to. But like I mentioned, the film's beginning and ending are solid. For starters, it's awesome seeing the Maximals in live action, and they are actually important to the film's story, unlike the Dinobots in Age of Extinction. And the movie doesn't tease you with the Maximals, it starts off with them right away in one of the best opening scenes of the whole series. This opener is great at establishing what the movie is about. It shows us the Transwarp key, the Maximals, Unicron, and the main villain of the film, Scourge. And oh man, Scourge is such a good villain. He's threatening, he's strong, he's voiced by Peter Dinklage. He has it all. And he says one of the hardest lines in all of Transformers.
I enjoy that look of confusion when an inferior being meets a higher power.
But I will say though, some of his lines are hilariously flat.
Master, the reinforcements!
He also heavily raises the stakes of the film by killing Bumblebee, who was previously thought to be unkillable. And just about all the other Transformers stuff in this movie is fantastic. The Autobot team is full of personality. Wheeljack, Stratosphere, and especially Mirage are standouts. And the friendship between Mirage and Noah is fairly well developed. They have a ton of scenes just being buds. And Pete Davidson gives a really solid vocal performance.
You've been inside me.
And Optimus Prime was a standout. He's legendary in every movie he's in, but here, Optimus has actual character development. It's not the most well-written arc as I've already mentioned, but it's still interesting to see Prime find his values of protecting all life. And Peter Cullen sells every line of this movie, especially this one.
I'm going to take back Scourge's key and then take off his head.
While I think the Transformers are great all around, I struggle to find the same enjoyment with the human characters. We don't get a ton of time to explore Elena's character, so she ends up kind of boring and forgettable. Noah Diaz is a little bit better though. We get to see his struggles with money and trying to support his family. We get to see his relationship with his brother. And that context really helps to get behind him as a character and to understand his motivations. Also, he's a G.I. Joe now, so that's cool. I feel like we're not talking about the new Transformers and G.I. Joe movie enough. Like, that's happening. We're getting that. Crazy times. My absolute favorite aspect about this movie is the action scenes. There are 2 in particular that I think are some of the best in the whole series. The museum fight is pretty awesome. Visually, it looks great with it being lit by all the fire, and all the Autobots are doing awesome stuff. And there's even a solid little scary sequence with Noah and Elena escaping Freezer and Novocaine. But the huge battle at the end of the movie is spectacular. There is so much happening, and it's all awesome. The Maximals maximizing, Prime and Primal killing Battletrap, Mirage's sacrifice, and Noah becoming a knockoff Iron Man, Optimus keeping his promise and taking off Scourge's head. It's all cool as hell and will leave a lasting impact on me for years to come. But the absolute best part of this final sequence is Bumblebee's resurrection. Him dropping down from the sky when the Autobots needed reinforcements was amazing, and it proves that once and for all, Bumblebee really is the greatest of all time. Transformers Rise of the Beast is a blast to watch, but is sadly held down by that tiresome middle section, so I'm going to put it in B tier. Before I get to Transformers 1, I just want to say if you're enjoying this video so far, why not hit that subscribe button? We just hit 10k subs and now I'm reaching for the stars. If we reach 100,000 subscribers, I will do a ranking of the entire Star Wars franchise. Not just the movies, but the shows, and the cartoons too. It's a really out there goal, but if you want to see that video, hit that subscribe button and let's make it happen. Now let's see how Transformers 1 ranks. And just a heads up, there will be no spoilers from here on out. I gotta be honest, I did not expect Transformers 1 to be this good. I think I speak for everyone when I say the first trailer for this movie looked really bad. The animation was a bit jarring, it looked like it had more of a kiddie tone, and the story seemed muddled. But the finished product is a thoroughly satisfying Transformers film that really focuses on the growing divide between Optimus Prime and Megatron. One thing that's going to be very make or break for this movie with a lot of audience members is the casting. People really dog on celebrity casting in animated movies, and while I agree that sometimes the hate is warranted, I firmly believe this cast does a really good job. Scarlett Johansson's voice works really well for Alita 1, who's a more serious and by-the-books type of character. Brian Tyree Henry is great as D16. His full turn into Megatron is made more believable because of the intensity and sincerity of Henry's vocal performance. Seriously, this guy full-on becomes Megatron by the end. Decepticons! The one actor I wasn't sure on was Keegan-Michael Key as B-127. If it wasn't apparent already, Bumblebee is my favorite Transformers character, and I was really worried about his characterization in this new film. I thought he was going to get too jokey and just be really annoying, but as the movie progressed, he really won me over. He is more goofy than previous adaptations of the character, but they balance it out with his more actiony moments. He really puts those knife hands to work. Also, there's an Aaron joke in this movie. I won't spoil where it is, but it got a chuckle out of me. But Chris Hemsworth is the real conversation starter. His voice for Orion Pax / Optimus Prime will work for some and will not work for others. And if you ask me, he did a phenomenal job. Peter Cullen could never be replaced, but Hemsworth manages to capture the character's little mannerisms and low vocal gravel. He really sounded like a younger version of the character.
Now is the time for us to stand up together as one.
Also, I think this year solidified Chris Hemsworth as the best Chris. Between Optimus Prime and Dementus, Hemsworth has really separated himself from the other Chris's in my eyes. Also, Steve Buscemi voices Starscream, and this is the greatest casting of all time. I mean, he's the guy. He's the guy. Monsters Inc. How do you do, fellow kids? He was the guy who died in Grown Ups. I love his version of Starscream. I was pogging out when he showed up on screen for the first time. Another thing I was at first unsure about was the animation, but after seeing it in a theater and on the big screen, I was really blown away. There are a lot of moments that just look gorgeous, and the animation is kinetic and lively and a different Transformers experience. I also like a lot of the character designs. It's cool that they're all G1 inspired, but with a twist. And the action scenes slap so hard. The first half of the film isn't as action focused, but when we enter that third act, oh boy, there are so many wanna jump out of your seat and cheer kind of moments. I of course don't want to spoil anything. The last 15 minutes or so are incredible. The one major issue I had with Transformers 1 was the dialogue. A lot of it really stood out to me in a negative way. It at times seemed very simple and unnecessary, almost like the writers were being absolutely sure that kids could understand it better. There were a few scenes between Orion Pax and D16 that were literally just this. Oh gee, I'm sure glad you're my friend, D16. I am glad you are my friend too, Orion Pax. This is stupid. This is a stupid bit I'm doing. We're making sure everyone knows we're good friends so that when we fight at the end of the movie, they feel sad. Okay, obviously the dialogue wasn't exactly that, but it was in a similar vein. And I thought that was just really unnecessary. Without those bits of dialogue, kids could understand the story just fine. We see through their actions that Orion Pax and D16 are good friends. It doesn't have to be constantly told to us. But even with that rough dialogue from time to time, the relationship between Optimus Prime and Megatron is easily the best part of this movie. It is heartbreaking to watch these two friends come to odds with one another when this divide forms between them. This new divide. And more importantly, Transformers 1 does an incredible job at explaining how Orion Pax became Optimus Prime and how D16 became Megatron. I can't really say how that happened because of spoilers, but both of these characters are incredibly well characterized. Transformers 1 is an incredible experience, and it feels great to see a new, fun Transformers movie on the big screen. I was so psyched after watching this movie that I went straight to Target and bought this new Optimus Prime figure from the movie. I'm not showing this off because it's cool. I'm showing this off because it's a cry for help. Transformers 1 is going in A tier, and that's the tier list. Of course, this is just my opinion, and I would love to hear how you guys would rank all the Transformers movies down in the comments. And if you want to watch another video, you can click here to watch my ranking of every X-Men movie, or if you're in the mood for something else, you can click on this video that YouTube picked out just for you.